Welcome to our series, Lunch with Live in America. My name is Cynthia Post Hunt, and I am the programmer for dance and theater at the Momentary. Today, we are eating barbecue, and I'll hand this off to Kara.
Hi, I'm Kara Martinez. I'm the director of Live in America. Live in America is a new sort of research and performing arts festival that looks at the potency and the power of communities in performance. And the communities we're working with right now are Las Vegas, Albuquerque with the Apache, Diné, and Pueblo peoples. I have like a map in my head where I name things. El Paso Juarez, Northwest Arkansas, New Orleans, who's here with us today, and we're super excited to welcome them. Sumter County, Alabama, San Juan, and Detroit. That's our folks from all over these places are helping make this festival. I cannot explain how excited that New Orleans is with us. It's one of my favorite cities in the world. I've had some of the most incredible life experiences in New Orleans. It's in a beautiful, incredible, complicated place. And I'm happy to welcome Jay and Gypsy to this conversation. And I am gonna let them introduce themselves.
Hi, Gypsy. Pronouns she, her, they, them. I use them interchangeably. I am born, mostly raised in New Orleans, also known as Bulbancha. Yeah, I have a special love for this special place. I leave often, but I always come back. So that's kind of my relationship with my home city.
I'm Jay Pennington. I am I operate a nonprofit called New Orleans Airlift in New Orleans and a project called the Music Box Village. It's a village of musical architecture. In my life, I'm a musician, DJ, artist manager, anything musical, work on music videos, things like that. Just stay busy within the musical realm and live in New Orleans for that very reason, because it's the best place to be a musician on earth, I think, just about. And yeah, I've been here for 25 years, came as a broke wanderer and have left many times as well, like Gypsy, and just keep getting pulled back in, till I finally just bought a house and said, forget it. It's gonna happen. It's done, you know? So yeah, that's how I ended up here. But yeah, every day is like a strange blessing and a strange, unexpected experience in this town. So who knows what is around the corner for any of us.
Y'all want to talk about the New Orleans barbecue you're eating?
Oh, yeah. I went to the joint, or the Jert, as people call it, here in New Orleans. Their neighborhood little spot. You can smell them from blocks around. It's really, really nice to have them right around the corner from me, from where I live. And they've been going for probably like about 10 or 11 years. They got their recipes together. I love every single thing that they do. And I'm eating burnt ends, which I really love today. I know. They're burnt.
Oh, so nice.
Look at that.
Yeah.
With some baked beans, which I've been like obsessing over baked beans for some reason lately. I haven't had any, but I've been thinking about them off and on. So I finally got them in my stomach, and a little coleslaw. And some, we're all talking about the bread. I don't know. I like a thicker piece of Texas toast. I'm not really like for these little white bread, sugary little white breads. I like the big piece of toast. But we're gonna overlook it. It's not the most important part. It's just it's an accessory.
It's a boundary.
It's a boundary, exactly.
Yeah. I love to hear you like throwing this toast over the side.
Get this toast.
I was thinking about on the website, is it your 5-word your 5-word bio, something about boundaries?
Boundaries means I love you, which I chose at a young age to have interesting friends in my life. And when you choose interesting, you get all kinds of complications. And boundaries, often people think of them as a way to distance or separate. I see it as, this is how I continue to love you. If I really, really love you and you really make my life hard, I'm going to put up a boundary to make sure that we can still be friends. somehow or another, or I can still care about you. You don't fuck everything up, you know? So boundaries means I love you. And it's really worked well. It's kept me out of a lot of trouble, you know?
Do you have that in a t-shirt? I feel like that would be
Okay.
a good t-shirt
I'll-
or tote bag.
I'll send you one, definitely, for sure.
We'll
Only
add
comes
to
in, like,
our-
It only comes in like the largest size possible though. So it's just gonna
Yeah.
be like for boundaries, you know, to give you
Yeah.
some space.
Yeah, I foresee something maybe with that living in the festival.
We
Yeah,
have
that sounds great. It's like choose life or something, you know, boundaries means I love you.
so much
Mhm.
swag, so much swag. Gypsy,
Yeah.
what barbecue are you having?
I got barbecue from a Central City barbecue. I'm a brisket person, and sometimes like some people's brisket is too fatty for me. I like mine on the lean side, and I'm kind of more of a I like smoky. And like Crescent City always has like this perfect pink smoke ring on their brisket. Not as bad as their barbecue sauce, but so I usually have to like doctor that up. But I'm with Jay. I also got some baked beans. I don't like their pickles and their onions, but I make my own. So I've got my own pickles. Yeah.
I
I
got
probably could have used another piece of bread, but I'm like Kara. I'm just give me a big piece of Texas toast. Doesn't have to be toasted though. I just want like the white bread.
Yeah,
Mhm. You want the sponge. Yeah.
I have
That's good.
some brisket from Black's Barbecue, which is like a Central Texas sort of smoked style barbecue at a Lockhart. This is honoring Jay's family, the Central Texas barbecue.
Yes, indeed. The best.
Um,
Probably the best in the world.
So my barbecue is a little DIY from the fridge.
Okay.
So it's like a leftover chicken tender sandwich. Pretty much with the help of my mom, we raided the fridge and tried to make the closest thing to barbecue we could. So I got some pickles, some leftover potato wedges.
Hats off. Yeah, you really went in. I mean, California, how easy is it to find good barbecue? I wouldn't even try, I think.
Well, that's what I was like, this probably, I mean, I'm sure someone would argue with me, but this is kind of what I think barbecue meant to me growing up. Like, I don't know. When I mentioned it to my dad, he was like, oh, well, I don't know. Can we grill? I was like, and then of course, no one knew where there was a barbecue place here. So I found one, but they weren't open. So DIY.
Oh, that's hilarious.
Yeah.
Yeah, you're in one of the tougher states for barbecue, I'd say, for sure.
It's so funny to me, like when we eat together, because it's so very typical of like process of like working with one another that we always start in this moment as opposed to formal conversations about performance. Like we just start with like, how do we know one another? And one of the ways we know one another is through food. And it seems to me like, I'm like, oh, I remember barbecue helps me remember where Jay's family's from.
Mm-hmm.
And it's these wild sort of rhizomes that form around a human in your mind. And how do we open ourselves to like the complexity of all of that? We're going to start our talk. We'll just hit right off the bat with complexity now that we've gone through meats and white bread. Can y'all talk to me about when I say this word America, what that means to you, what it signals, anything you want around that idea?
Yeah, it's very loaded, you know. It's such a really pregnant topic. It has so many complex emotions around that. I was thinking about this a couple of days ago, the degree to which I was raised to really think of America as a melting pot. I mean, Sesame Street, all the media as a child that we digested, and it was pretty much universal. Everyone was digesting the same media. It wasn't like the media universe we live in now, where you can watch, Frozen 700 times in a row or whatever. I'm also almost 50, so 1970s was my youngest, most formative part of my childhood. And I am, it must have been a complete fabrication that we were this giant friendly melting pot, but it's something that I was led to believe in really growing up. Or ending up where we are now, I feel a little bit betrayed by that. I feel a little bit surprised that America doesn't seem quite as friendly and melty. as I thought it was growing up. And not to say that I'm not a realist or whatever, but America is like, I guess I used to think of it as everything sort of swimming together, and now it feels very stratified. Now it feels like things have separated out in the country, and that impression of it has kind of shifted the way I think about a lot of things in terms of that. And then I live in New Orleans, which I don't really think of as, you know, an American city in the truest sense. You know, we're definitely more of a Caribbean city first and foremost, and we're definitely a very settled international city. You know, like people's presences have really made a mark and remained in, and they haven't assimilated to the Americanism quite as rapidly as other places, or quite as completely as other places. So it's hard to say what America is when you've chosen to live kind of outside of it just a little bit. But so I feel wrong about America. Like, I feel like a lot of my impressions from childhood and a lot of my understandings of like what's going on out there outside of here are maybe just, I have a lot to learn, you know? That's the way I think of it. There's a lot of gaps in my understanding.
I definitely agree with you on the like feeling detached from America because of where we live and how we live. We definitely live in a very special place, you know, temperature wise, culture wise, like the people that make up the city. I definitely have always kind of looked at as America as a melting pot, but having a different understanding of of what it looked like and what it felt like coming from migrant communities. I'm first generation American on one side, second generation on the other. So it was like I knew it was a melting pot, but I also like saw that it wasn't all, you know, open gates, come on in.
Yeah.
And I also knew that it was something that, you know, my grandparents and my great aunts and uncles, they were proud to be here. And so that has also meant something to me. Like they, you know, they're like, I know it's not all glitz and gold, but we're going to be here. We're going to make it mean something. And so I've had to, you know, lean in with that same intention as well.
I was thinking about Gypsy, my dad's first generation, and my mom's family's white, and like watching that idea of the melting pot, and like just as a kid recognizing like who here actually is asked to melt, because it seems to be that it's not equivocal across the board.
Right.
Yeah. But also having my grandparents and father like express very clearly how grateful they are to be here, and that all those kinds of realities live in the same space.
Nuance, extremely.
Yep.
Yeah. Something that's kind of sorely lacking these days, you know? Really, we're doing well with nuance.
Mm-hmm.
No, and it's funny in our like in thinking about like creating Live in America together, like the gestures like that your brain goes to that aren't nuanced, and just having to pull back and go like, nope, just let it be, back off, let it be nuanced, like let that develop as it wants to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Also, side note, not that I'm a nerd and researched it this morning, but the word barbecue is Caribbean.
Oh, really?
Yep.
Wonder what it comes from. It must be just like kind of a.
It's a native word. I read about it. This is embarrassing. It's a native word. I'm trying to remember the indigenous people. It starts with the T. Maybe I can't remember the exact place they're from, but the word was barbacoa, which you see then of course pop up in like Mexico. But that's where the word comes from. It doesn't hit Europe until like the 1500s.
Yeah, makes sense.
Nerd moment.
I'm curious, was it Taino?
Yes, that's exactly what it was. I knew. I'm a nerd moment.
So the Taino people, there's of course like smaller populations, but the Taino people come from Puerto Rico, Bahamas. There's also like a Taino era people from Jamaica. So yeah, that's really interesting. That's cool to know. Thanks for sharing that.
Yeah. Perfect.
Yeah. Right. And then, I mean, I guess this gets it to like, where do things come from? And like how, like when you think about like how y'all think about performance in New Orleans, where is that coming from in y'all's mind?
you want to say something? I can think of something, but
Yeah, I think like a word that you've used since we started like conceptualizing the New Orleans part of this festival was pageantry, and that's something like a word that I've been keeping in mind throughout this whole process. I think about my neighborhood, for example. Like I live next door to a bounce DJ. Like he, he DJs on party buses, and so like he's literally, you may hear him at some point riding up and down the street, blasting his music, or he sits in the backyard and like it's almost like a free concert. But that's like that's a part of like the performance and the pageantry like of my neighborhood. I live up the street from, there's a neighborhood park, and sometimes families will have barbecues, and like they'll have like little talent shows for the kids. Like it's really like a part of who we are, like without even thinking about it. The personalities here in New Orleans are very performative. We're all characters, I think. I keep talking about my neighborhood because it is just like what's fresh on my mind. I have a neighbor who sits outside of his porch all day drinking beer, and he knows everybody's business on the block. But that's a part of like the pageantry, and it's almost like a show. Like you think about like a sitcom, like there's all these like little characters with their quirks and like with their nicknames. That's New Orleans all day, every day.
Yeah, I would agree. I'd say also for me, when I think about performance in New Orleans, I think about function, I think about the purpose of music in people's lives. And I think for a lot of people, it's something that you maybe just consume from the radio or from whatever kind of immediate sources are around you. And maybe you're even like a little bit picky about what you think music is, what you think the emotional value of music is or whatever. But here, it's a very deliberate, concerted, historical and traditional understanding of music as a tool. It has a purpose. It has a time and a place. It does a lot of things. It helps people get their mind together. It helps people mourn. It helps people celebrate. It's very functional in the super literal sense. It provides like a transcendent value to regular life experiences, especially where death is fairly common. We're historically fairly familiar with death through diseases, through living in a swamp, essentially. There's just a lot of that going on around us. And so like you have maybe a greater need for music or art or whatever to give you that thing. But it certainly feels to me like everything I think about when I think about music is its value, the value that it brought from its origination to now, and how we're going to use it. What are we going to use this for? As opposed to just, do I like these sounds, or do these notes fit together, or does this uniform or outfit look cool? Like it's much more about like shaping people's mental state, shaping their lives, for me.
I'm thinking about the artist y'all selected to put on your Live in America webpage, Quintron, who his soundscape, and then of his own volition, he wrote like an essay about how that soundscape functioned as like a useful tool. Like he broke it down. I was as excited to read his thought process as to listen. Like both were completely fascinating.
Yeah. And I think that most people see art in this way, whether or not they maybe articulate it or not. I mean, I think a lot of people just know that it has value and turn to it for the things that it gives. Performance music, all of it, not just like, I don't want to just relegate it to music, but sounds on the street, like everything has this functionality. That is, I think it's just rare in other cities. I think most people it's a consumable thing. I don't know what the word I'm looking for is. It's consumable, but here it's participatory. You're not consuming it. By absorbing it, you're being a changed person and you're changing others around you. So it's just a different take on what the meaning is and what the purpose is. And it's a little bit more medicinal in some ways, has a little bit more medicinal quality. But people really are turned off to like, I've found anyway, people are really turned off to like, say like avant-garde music for the sake of being avant-garde, for instance. Like, that kind of thing just doesn't really float here. it's not art in the capital A sense. It's like life as art, and then the music and performance and all that just comes out of it. Yeah. For me, this is like my observation. It's hard to say for sure what everyone in New Orleans is thinking, because everyone's, like you said before, everyone's so different, and such a character in their own story that it's hard to make a blanket generalization and be right here, you know?
Yeah, I was gonna comment, and then I put like a big piece of brisket in my mouth. But something
I'll
else.
put the brisket in my mouth now while you talk.
Okay, go. Yeah. With your dry Texas toast.
Mhm. Yeah.
Yeah, one of the things that I was also thinking about is like how from youth, like it's something like you want to be a performer, you want to be on stage, you want to have a craft, a talent. Growing up here, it was cool to be in the band. Like you have like a lot of other places, and like you have the band nerds, but it is not. We do not have that culture here. Like you want to be in the band, you want to learn how to play a horn, you want to learn how to play a drum, because you want to march in parade. You want to be able.
You're cooler than the football players.
Exactly. So I think that's a big difference in our culture here in the city. Like even I've seen there's a 6-year-old, the trombone is longer than him. But he rides with the big dogs. Like he's out there, every Sunday. And that's something, he asked his mom, he was like, I want to play a horn. Because it's something that like the youth here and the adults here even aspire to be, like Rusty was saying, like he came here because this is like a musician's dream. It's very much embedded in everything, and people recognize that. Yeah,
absolutely. We should maybe say that I have a second name also, because you just called me Rusty.
I do that a lot with my friends who have like performer names. Like,
yeah.
Sometimes
it's very interchangeable for me personally, but yeah, Rusty Laser DJs and does a lot of other crazy things. Anyway.
I'm just thinking about, when we're conditioned to think that the performance like sits in these kind of siloed, almost sterile spaces, and it goes in and it happens there. And one of the things I am hearing in what y'all are saying, and y'all can speak further to this, is like proximity. In New Orleans, if you're near a performance, you are like in it. You are like, at the very least, you're around it. Like, but there's not, those boundaries are gone.
Yeah. I think people really don't trust polished performative work here. I've had friends come into town with their shows, they're real slick shows they created somewhere else, and they think they're going to just wow the city, and they love New Orleans creatively, and they want to just blow everyone away, and a legitimate effort to get people excited about their work. But everyone here is a creator. Everyone here is making and doing stuff. If your thing is too polished or too intentionally trying to make me feel something, there's no room for me to like come meet you there. You've pretty much just rolled right over me, and you're kind of saying, well, I don't need your input in this situation. I just need you to absorb. And no one does that here. It's absorbing and giving input are simultaneous actions. You're feeding the musicians. I've worked with several bounce artists who have played shows through some of the hardest experiences. I'm remembering a moment with Big Frida where she showed up for a show with me about an hour late because her boyfriend had just been murdered that day, and hours before. And she was standing outside the club kind of crying. We were debating what to do. I said, don't do this show. I'll just send you your money when the show's over. You're good. Just go home. And she said, if I go home, it's over. If I go home, I just have me and my thoughts. But if I stay here and perform, everyone in this room is going to give me what I need to get to feel better. And that is not something you really hear a lot from a lot of other places, a lot of other artists, like understanding that function so deeply and knowing that like the audience is coming too, like they're not just they're passive recipient of your output. That's exhausting, by the way, as a musician, just giving and giving and giving and to a passive audience that's just receiving. Getting that buy-in and getting that energy back from people is how we do that, you know, how New Orleans does that. And it also means that a lot of people in the spaces that we're in, streets, clubs, whatever it is, are, like you said, Gypsy, like they are strong individuals of their own. And we could all be, you might be standing on stage thinking you're impressing everyone, but we're actually all freaking out because this guy over here who lives on the block is dancing like no one's ever seen before, you know, and having his moment, and we're not even noticing that you're up on stage. Like there's so much that's going on in an exchange of energy, is what I'm saying.
Yeah, definitely like a mutualistic, symbiotic relationship, not at all a spectator sport. If you will. Like people, you're expected to participate. You're expected to share in the experience. It's kind of rude to stare. I think that's more so like how people feel about performance here.
Mm-hmm. It makes everything feel like church, you know, like every moment of creativity here has that kind of like reciprocation, or everything that's done well, you know, has a measure of that reciprocation that you would find in like a congregant setting, as opposed to just like a rock concert or whatever. Obviously, we also have like Smoothie King Center where you can go see, you know, I don't know, REO Speedwagon or whoever the hell is, you know, whatever dinosaurs are showing up there. But those things exist, no question. But, you know, I'm talking more about like art, New Orleans art at its like base creative level, at the street level, you know.
One of the things I learned from y'all about how we need to think about Live in America is like hearing this conversation and then questioning assumptions made about other communities, and are there actually those kinds of close energy exchanges happening and we just don't pay attention to them? And how do we make clear to the different communities that we're working with that we're not just interested in things that have passive reception, but can be activated moments as well? And I mean, I think that will happen in Albuquerque, definitely, with what they're doing. I mean, in most of it, when you ask people, what does performance look like in your community, and they feel free to answer their truth, then it'll get you to a new place.
Yeah.
I think too, we're, you know, in thinking about the festival as a whole, we're really thinking about that space for the audience to really like be and to accept, and then to participate as well.
Yeah.
So I think that we're definitely keeping that in mind, right? And that we've learned from every project, every person, is that time is actually really helpful.
Yeah. Truly.
Yeah.
We talk about that macro and the micro, and I think that's a balance of both.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
We've got a couple minutes left, because I, of course, stopped paying attention to time because I was listening to y'all. But yeah, any final thoughts? Y'all want to give a hint of what you're going to do at Live in America? We'll come back around and talk about that programming specifically on another talk, but.
Yeah. You got anything?
You don't have to. We can keep
No, it's fine. I could say something. I just didn't want to jump. I didn't want to jump the gun.
No, go ahead.
Yeah. I think the thing that I'm noticing, especially after our visit up to Northwest Arkansas, is how much I'm vacillating between New Orleans as like celebratory tool. Let's be honest, whenever we do this, COVID will be over, right? Like whenever it happens. So celebration is the order of the day, like that for everyone, every person. Like we're all going to be looking for that in our lives, and New Orleans can do that hands down, no problem. We'll make you celebrate, even if it's terrible circumstances. People will make you celebrate, and that's so that for me, like, just, you know, it's so easy to kind of fall into that as a New Orleans, as a programmer of anything New Orleans. It's so easy to fall into the guaranteed good time of so many different kinds of aspects of our culture, but then to gloss over some of the things that are really meaningful, but maybe that aren't just straight up good times, you know? And so that challenge is where I feel like I'm kind of really trying to go inward and think a lot about where because what's really deep to us, like a second line on a Sunday, is just a crazy party to anyone else. It just looks like a crazy party. But it's super deep and meaningful and has so many layers that are happening all around you that you're unaware of, and relationships that people have with each other that the casual observer is unaware of. It's like, I think the biggest fear I have is bringing anything that doesn't help reveal some of that depth and meaning, and ends up being like, a sort of, and I'm no shade to Jazz Fest, but like a little bit of a festy kind of vibe, though at the same time, so many musicians that I'm interested in bringing to this are, it's because they are so good at celebrating. It's because they're so good at what they do. But it can really, like, it's a fine line between like sharing the depth of meaning and people just taking the surface experience away. And so I'm nervous about that, how to balance all that, You have any thoughts, Gypsy?
I'm that person who is like, I got you something. Do you want to know what it is? And I lose, so I'm going to keep my lips shut.
I love that.
I personally geek out every time, like just hardcore geek. Every time I hear more and more about your thinking. I love that you're not going to let the audience have the easy out of things simply being celebratory, but that celebration has a historical context where it's coming from, and that it's also sometimes about pain. And history's dirty, and all of it's coming from that. So I love that you guys are thinking through that.
Yeah.
Cynthia, any final thoughts?
Well, I mean, I know we've talked about it when you all were here and in past conversations, but I think that, like, I have a lot of faith in our audience that that we will embrace not the festival, but also New Orleans, and join in the celebration and the pain. And yeah, I mean, as you said, like, we're, COVID will be over by then, and we'll be having much to celebrate. And I think, sometimes you might not understand all the layers, but you come to it with your own layers, right? And just like slow little tidbits here and there, it might be your first access point, but like then that second time that you're invited into that space, you can get that much deeper. So I think that it's just going to be really exciting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think in trying to provide that experience, not only for Northwest Arkansas participants or audiences, but also the New Orleans artists that are coming, trying to provide the same depth of meaning to the experience of going to Northwest Arkansas will kind of help generate that to some degree. How we do that is the challenge, I think, is just how do you, because, New Orleans people, they know everything that we have here is the best that there is. So it's really hard to go, you know what I mean? There's so much arrogance about it that it's like appreciate the other cultures, and like appreciate where people are at. And so that'll be part of our challenge, I think. It's just to try and, if we can get New Orleans artists to engage deeply, they're going to bring Northwest Arkansas right along with them. Mm-hmm. It goes both ways. Knife cuts both ways.
Look, how do we do that is like the driving question of life in America.
Oh yeah, yeah, absolutely.
So we welcome that. I mean, how do we do it? Like, that signals thought and time and process and community, and that's where we want to be.
Yeah, how do you create something that actually leaves a change behind, leaves a transformation of some sort, Yeah.
Well, I'm going to wrap this up for us. Y'all are wonderful. Thanks for having barbecue with us. We'll talk to you soon, and we'll do another round of this where we will, as much as you want to share with people, can speak to the specifics of what you're thinking.
All right.
All right.
Right.
Have a good rest of the day, y'all.
Thank you.